let's get into the big topic of open source, something that we actually say at Red Hat.
This is so awesome.
We are an open culture that believes
actually
in
a big
importance
piece
of
of
What is that process that a developer, or let's say
As the Kubernetes ecosystem really boomed,
Hello and welcome to this week's Ask an OpenShift Admin Office Hours live stream. I am co-host Andrew Sullivan, joined as always by the lovely, amazing, talented, and incredible Mr. Jonny Rickard. How are you today, sir?
I'm good. How are you?
It's rainy and stormy and just kind of gross Wednesday here in the Raleigh area. So apparently they're expecting a hurricane or something in the next couple of days. I should actually watch the news.
Oh, dang. Yeah, man, it's just hot and muggy here. Like it's actually it's like 90 something and humid.
So just a day that ends in Y there in Texas.
Yeah, it's just terrible. Yeah. I mean, normally it's not so bad, like the humidity anyways, but yeah, it's pretty bad right now.
So hello everyone, welcome to the live stream. So as always, this is one of the Office Hours series of live streams here on Red Hat Live Streaming. I feel like I've said live stream way too many times in a row, and I am now hitting semantic satiation. So that means that we are here to answer any and all questions that come to mind for you. So anything that is on your mind, whether you want to ask us questions about how OpenShift works or features or anything like that, be sure to raise those up in the chat. Regardless of which platform you're watching us on, it'll all get cross-posted across all of them. You'll see all of that stuff happen. So don't hesitate to speak up. And if you're not watching us live, or I guess even if you are watching us live, you can also reach out to us via email. Both Jonny and I have our email addresses here on the screen. It's Jonny, Jonny, at redhat.com, or Sully at redhat.com, SULLY. We're happy to take those questions, and we'll do our best to answer them and get back to you. Sometimes we'll do follow-ups here on the stream, stuff like that. So please don't hesitate to reach out. That being said, today's stream is one that we've had in the pipe for quite a while. This is one that our guest today, Ashley, came to us and said, hey, I've got this really cool thing. Would you all be willing to let me show it off? And of course, we jumped at the opportunity because we love when technical people want to show off the really cool technical things that they're doing. And this is definitely one of those cases. So first of all, thank you, Ashley, for offering to join us, for taking a big step here onto the stage. There's refreshments backstage, bottles of water and stuff like that. So I say, yeah, there you go. I say that. I forgot mine. I left my cup of coffee. If you can't tell, I'm actually in an office today. We have these like fancy movable whiteboards and stuff in here.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's what those are. I was wondering.
Yeah, I left my cup of coffee sitting on the desk when I hijacked this conference room to do the live stream. So Ashley, please introduce yourself.
Thank you so much, Sully and Jonny, for having me on here. Hi, everyone. My name is Ashley D'Andrea. Self-description for starters. I am a white non-binary person. My pronouns are they and she, or Ashley. I have extra long curly purple hair, and I'm wearing a floral EV evolution dress, a necklace from Hawaii that looks like a Pokeball, purple rimmed cat eye glasses, and my Red Hat fedora. My background is in software engineering and engineering in general, architecture, among other things. I've been at Red Hat for almost 5 years. I'm Global Vice Chair of Red Hat Pride, and I'm also currently on the Content Services team in Product and Technical Learning. We make all the courses in Red Hat Online Learning. So if you used a course, you've used our stuff. Shout out to my awesome team and all of PTL. I did not get permission to name names, but they know who they are.
I'm glad you said who PTL is, because I think that's an important one. And I feel like most folks have had some interaction with, even if they don't know it, with you and your team. And like Jonny, you and I think it seems like almost every stream we're recommending like the DO080 course, which is from your team, among many others that come up. So it's always great to put a name and a face to the set of people who are responsible for those things. And I am slightly biased because I work with y'all on a fairly regular basis, but y'all are great to work with. Thank you.
You're welcome.
With that, let's see, Jonny, I see Malik posted a question here. Upgrading to a version of OpenShift where deployment configs are deprecated. What are some things to keep in mind to make sure the move goes smoothly? That is I don't know what the answer is to moving from deployment configs to deployments yet. I don't know if we have anything automated or anything in place. So Jonny or Ashley, I don't know if you have anything there.
No, I'm just looking it up really quick, but as far as I know, there's nothing official out there. Really, it's just going to be taking out the, like when you're going through your deployment config, just taking out the OpenShift specific API things. And there's like, it's like upgrade strategies are a little bit different. Like there's just like little nuanced things. I'm going to find a link that does that'll like. I found a link before that's had like the differences between the DCs and the deployments, so that way you can at least go. It sucks that you can't do it, through automation, but at least you'll have something to do side by side.
Yeah, I've been using what we're moving to for a while anyway, so I guess I'm biased. But I have not seen anything. I probably have some links for manual. I'll try and find those later.
Yeah. I was just thinking, I was chatting with Gaurav Singh, so PM for OpenShift Lightspeed, who we've had on the stream here before. And I was just thinking, man, this would be one of those things where sure it'd be great if we had like an AI assistant that could go through and make these recommendations. But anyways, Fernando, new to OpenShift, what are the prerequisites to learn OpenShift? So I would say the prerequisites are, I mean, where does prerequisites start at? OpenShift itself is a Kubernetes distribution with a bunch of things added on top. So you don't really need to know anything about Kubernetes. You'll learn that as you learn OpenShift itself. A moment ago I mentioned the DO080 course. It's free to anyone and everyone. You can go to, is it learning or learn.redhat.com? I always get those confused. One is internal and one is external.
Learn.
Okay, so you can go to learn.redhat.com. You can search for DO080, and that course will pop up. It's free. You can walk through. It'll step you through some of the basics. If you want to continue on the learning path, either self-guided or instructor-led, we also offer things like DO0180, DO280, which is a great one. That's the one that I think most people consider the threshold. But there's, if you get into virtualization, there's DO316, and these are just the ones that I remember off the top of my head. There's entire learning paths that explain all of these things and how to do them. So you can also, and I would definitely encourage you, so two things. One, everyone that goes to developers.redhat.com and registers for an account has access to developer entitlements for OpenShift. So it's up to 16 nodes of OpenShift that are completely free that you can use for single user non-production purposes. So you can deploy your cluster, you can get started, you can do all the things that you want without having to do anything there. If that feels like too much of a barrier, you can also go to try.openshift.com and it'll take you to various places where you can, click a button and get maybe a Red Hat OpenShift on AWS deployment. Right? So, hey, I don't need any infrastructure. I don't need anything except to click a button, and now I have access to an instance. And then last but not least is, it used to be learn.openshift.com, and now I don't remember where it directs to. I think it redirects over to developers.redhat.com. And there's a number of instruct courses there that are just, most of them are like 5, 10, 15 minutes long, and they're just scenarios that you can walk through. So all places where you can get started. Linux knowledge is not a prerequisite. Programming knowledge is not a prerequisite. It does help to understand YAML because Kubernetes. But other than that, I feel like I've rambled a lot here, considering we have an actual learning expert here on the stream today with Ashley. So Ashley, please add any suggestions you have.
No, so much YAML. if you, it's YAML everywhere. What do they call it? YAML all the way down. So yeah, with OpenShift, one thing you'll learn if you haven't already with Kubernetes is everything is operators, basically. An operator is just a paradigm for encapsulating behavior and observation of your environment, changing and then doing appropriate things in response to that. Once you get the sense of that and understand that you're being more declarative, you're saying, this is how I want my environment to look or to behave, instead of do this. That's a paradigm shift for people who've come from other systems. One of the things I like about OpenShift and the OC command, which you'll be seeing a lot of today, is that you can be both declarative and imperative, and you can kind of mix the two. as you're doing your work. And sometimes that can prove beneficial, especially keeping you from making possible mistakes, some of which could be costly depending on what you're working on. And today we're working on certificates for the API, which is a major part, right, of OpenShift. That's the nervous system in a sense, where everything comes in through there, and the Ingress Controller, which handles input to all the applications that are running on the platform. So should I kick off here?
But we still have to get through the top of mind. So yeah.
Oh, go through your.
Yeah, we just ended up getting bombarded with questions, which is awesome.
That's okay.
Go. I did want to like just kind of touch on something that you were saying, Sully, too, right? With the DO280. If you're familiar with the Kubernetes training pipeline, right? DO280 is CKA, the Certified Kubernetes for Administrators. DO288, the Red Hat DO288 is basically the CCAD, so the Certified Kubernetes Application Developer. And like we talked about this a little bit before, I think, with especially in the rug about like which way to go. And like you're going to learn a lot either way, but if you're just trying to learn, a lot about like generic things that you can reuse everywhere, the CKA and the CKAD are primo for that. Like when you brought that up at the rug, I thought that was like as top-notch answers, because it's absolutely right. It's you learn about Kubernetes itself, and then you go and learn about OpenShift API on top of the Kubernetes API. So I thought it was awesome.
Yeah, and I see somebody brought up Podman here in chat. So a weird thing, right? It's if you are a Kubernetes or OpenShift administrator, do you need to understand containers? Like, at some level, yes. But you don't necessarily need to understand all of the, like, how to go and build applications into containers and, ship them around and do all that other stuff. If you're a developer, absolutely, right? You want to know how to build and ship and move around your application. If you're a cluster administrator, not necessarily. I would say that me, who's been an administrator for many, many years at this point, like, I know how to build containers, but it's not something I do. I wouldn't say I even do it monthly, maybe not even quarterly, because we pull in those application images from other places. So Podman is useful for doing local development type things, but you'll find that even as a developer developing with OpenShift, it's abstracted away. Somebody was just asking about deployments, right? You can use deployments in order to abstract away the entire build process and have it go through and build the application inside of the cluster and then deploy it inside of there, scale it up, and do all of those other things. So it's definitely both pro and con, a choose your own adventure.
Yeah, yeah, and definitely on the Podman side, like I maybe misinterpreted that question. I thought that was a what is Podman, but I think when you from an administrative perspective, right, you just need to know the lingo. Like what's an image, what's a layer, that type of stuff. Like what's like just some of the language around Podman and the container images themselves. So that way, when somebody's saying something, you can kind of understand like where in the workflow is this thing actually at? Is it part of a build? Is it like something I'm pulling in, that type of thing? But like deep, intricate knowledge, I agree with you, Sully. It's not necessary.
All right, let's go through the top of mind topics, Johnny.
All right, awesome. So the first one that I have here is KubeCon is coming up. It's 12 to 15 November. I'll be there. I just found out the other day that I'm going to be going. So if you are interested in stopping by the ArgoCon booth or the Red Hat booth at ArgoCon, come on by, come say hi. I'll be there. I'm also going to try and make an appearance at the OpenShift Commons brief. If you would like to sign up for that link is coming in shortly. And OpenShift Commons it's like another partner event that they have on the first day of KubeCon. So it's like one of the co-located events. OpenShift Commons is, if you're not familiar with that, it's the OpenShift community. And so, if you want to come out and listen to some of the stuff that's going on within the OpenShift community, some of our peers that they're working on with OpenShift Commons is a good place to come out and kind of, have that little, fist bump networking interaction with your other OpenShift admins. And that link to the OpenShift Commons event is here.
I'm gonna post the link to the main Commons website as well.
All right, awesome.
So that commons.openshift.org. If you go there, you can, like there's the Slack community and all that other stuff that's there. So you can join that. You can go and chat with other OpenShift users. It's meant to be the OpenShift or the Red Hat community for OpenShift. That being said, we also, John and I usually talk about the Kubernetes Slack channel for OpenShift. So if you go to slack.kubernetes.io, it'll ask you for your email address, which is just to generate the Slack invites to join their the Kubernetes organization. And then if you search for OpenShift users, it's you'll find a few thousand of our closest friends over there, chatting about all things OpenShift.
Yes. All right. Awesome.
Let's see what else we got.
The next one is it's just a blog. I don't mean to downplay that. It's a blog on learning OpenShift, and so I was taking a look at it this morning, and it's kind of cool because I think it was Deborah that put it together. Went through and they listed out a bunch of links that you can go to different videos for different objectives. Right? Hey, I want to learn this about virtualization, or I want to learn this about how OpenShift handles virtualization. Whatever. It's just pretty cool especially if you're not familiar with KubeVirt or OpenShift virtualization at all. It's probably a good place to go to get started. So I was like, oh, it's a good blog. It's worth sharing.
Don't lie, Johnny. It's because our faces show up down there on number 6.
Oh, you know what's funny? I completely overlooked that. That's hilarious.
Yeah, number 6 is the stream that we did with, I think it was Ian, right?
Shameless plug. Ian. We're there.
Yeah.
That's funny. I completely glossed over that. Wow.
Service. Oh, you had a follow up from when we were at the Rug with Service Mesh.
Yeah. So if you watched the last stream that we did, we were Sully was live at the Rug, the Red Hat user group in Minneapolis, and we got a question from somebody in the audience about ambient service mesh availability in Red Hat Service Mesh version 3. And so I reached out to our team internally, and basically the answer is not yet, but eventually it will be. It sounds like from Ortwin that the ambient mesh just GA'd in the upstream, and so it'll take some time to work itself back into Red Hat Service Mesh 3. And with that, Red Hat Service Mesh 3 just went tech preview. Now this is a huge change in Service Mesh, right? So Service Mesh 2 uses Maestra and some other things, and I think Service Mesh 3 is very focused on SAIL, and so it's a Ashley used a great word, paradigm. It's a shift in paradigm in how we approach the service mesh and how we manage the mesh itself. And so there's also a blog right here that I'm going to paste that kind of goes over some of the features that are coming out in Service Mesh 3. And I'm going to get online and plead, and beg some more Ortwin to come back on and talk about Service Mesh 3 and see if we can't get him to come on the stream and basically enlighten us.
Yeah. So Rakesh asks, how is OpenShift different from Red Hat Satellite? I'm happy to start that unless you want to, Johnny or Ash.
Yeah. So go ahead, please. Yeah, because I've been talking. So.
So it's been a minute since I used Satellite, and it was before Satellite 6 that I used Satellite. So Satellite is intended for doing, I'm going to say, configuration management of RHEL servers, be they physical or virtual. So that includes things like I can deploy those servers, configure those servers, as well as do things like host packages, RPM repositories, stuff like that. So OpenShift is a application platform for containerized applications, right? It is a Kubernetes distribution that is shipped and supported by Red Hat. It includes a bunch of other things piled on top. It's not just Kubernetes, but the admin console, service mesh, as Johnny was just saying, pipelines, GitOps, lots and lots of stuff inside of there. So they are where there might be some, I'll say, overlap, or where at least you might be a little bit confused, is when we talk about OpenShift virtualization. So OpenShift virtualization allows us to bring virtual machines and run them on top of OpenShift. So it becomes an enterprise hypervisor at that. And I think where folks get confused is, well, I can use Satellite to deploy VMs inside of Red Hat virtualization or VMware or something like that. I don't think Satellite works with OpenShift virtualization yet. But I can also do things like with OpenShift virtualization, I can entitle those those RHEL VMs, and I can push configuration to them using Cloud Init or even Ansible. and Satellite kind of does some similar things. So they have just like one or two little areas where they overlap in functionality, but 99.9% they're different use cases, different things.
Yeah, well said.
I think that covers it. So the only thing I had for top of mind, and Rakesh, please don't hesitate to ask more if that didn't answer your question. The only thing I had to add is because I just got the updated calendar invite. October 7th is going to be the What's New in OpenShift 4.17 live stream. So on here on the OpenShift YouTube channel as well as the OpenShift Twitch channel, we'll be streaming that out to the world. So come see all the cool new stuff that they've put into 4.17. I know there's a bunch of stuff that's going on with networking, with just all different areas of the platform. 4.17 feels like it's going to be a fairly substantial release, in my opinion. Which is not to say that the others aren't substantial, but this one just feels like it'll be something. So that's all I got. So unless you got anything else, Jonny.
No, it's topic time.
All right.
Back in the hot seat.
That's right.
Okay, so we want to go to the topic at hand. Can we bring up there it is. So there I am. I call myself a content and escape room architect because not only do we work on the course material, we work on the exercises and the labs. And sometimes you have to figure a way out of them, so to speak, make them work. So
I saw that earlier. I was wondering if you like literally worked on escape rooms, because that seems like it would be an interesting challenge. But,
Right? Yes, we set up an escape room as an app in the never mind. But yes, that's what I call it. Anyway, so yes, topics. We are going to go over sort of a 101 topic. If you're taking DO 280, you will encounter this. Basically, cluster certificates, the cluster, specifically the API and Ingress. So we will talk about TLS certificates, getting onto the cluster, and then setting a few things like the cluster-wide proxy, the Ingress Controller and API server, and then we'll discuss rolling it back. We won't demo that because that takes extra time. One thing I wanted to touch upon right at the start is folks say, well, wait, why don't you use automation? Automation, come on, why are you doing all this stuff by hand? Personally, I think it's instructive to see how these things are done behind the scenes, get an appreciation for what goes into that whole process. Also, if something goes a bit haywire, you'll have more understanding of where all the moving parts are by having done this manually. So I think makes it worth doing.
For what it's worth, I agree with you very much there, Ashley. Automation is great until something breaks, and then because you don't understand what's happening, then there's an old thing about programming or debugging is twice as hard as programming. So if you program something that is at the limit of your capabilities, it's basically impossible for you to debug. Well, if you don't know what's happening with the automation, then you don't know how to fix it when it breaks.
That's so true. So true. In fact, when I'm working on automation, I really have to rehearse everything manually many times. I might work on an Ansible playbook, but sometimes I am just down in shell going at it. And then I start to bring things. And that's just how I work. Other folks do it differently. But yeah, very true.
Yeah,
so
and sorry to interrupt, Ashley.
Okay.
Is there a free trial lab available for OpenShift? So if you want to deploy the labs and stuff like that, or deploy an OpenShift cluster, I don't think that there's any labs that are available to do that because of just the resources that are required. But you can get access to the developer entitlements to do that and walk through it yourself. If you want to get past that and just go into like deploying pods and applications and stuff like that, then I think Jonny there linked try.openshift.com. And that'll take you to all the various places.
Yep. So topics, we've gone through those. I realized when I picked this window, it moves ahead. So I have to be careful there. That's why I was jumping around before. So first thing, we'll talk about TLS certificates. Maybe you've heard of SSL certificates. When I was first involved in web stuff, TLS is what we use nowadays. This will presume that you have a Red Hat OpenShift 4 cluster installation and admin access, and that you have some baseline knowledge of using the environment. Like if you did a DO 80 or even 180, you're in good shape. We're going to provision 2 X509 certificates. X509 is an international standard for public key certificates. It's used in many internet protocols, including TLS, SSL, and it binds an identity, such as Red Hat or whoever, or in my case, my website, to a public key using a digital signature. Trivia, X509 comes from the ITU, or International Telecommunication Union, previously Telegraph Union. They are the oldest UN agency, I found out. So an X509, yeah, right?
I'm just happy to see you using... Yeah, that is just a strange bit of trivia. Now I'm prepared for my trivial pursuit. But, I was going to say, I'm just happy to see you using ECDSA, using modern cryptographic standards.
Thank you for recognizing that. Yes, ECDSA is the way to go. X509 certificate will have an identity, like a host name, an organization, an individual, and then a public key, which can be RSA, DSA, or ED 25519. We're using ECDSA, and is either signed by a CA or certificate authority, or is self-signed. ECDSA is elliptic curve digital signature algorithm. It uses elliptic curve cryptography. I will not be going into that today. Just trust me on this. It's good. So we're going to do a dry run of that if we have time for both the Ingress controller. Because we have multiple apps, we use a wildcard certificate for that. Oops. Forgot I can't select text in the slide. And then the API server. My server is dynamaxian.net. That's a portmanteau of Dynamax from Pokemon. You see a pattern here, see a theme. And Dymaxian from Bucky Fuller. We will use the certbot tool. That's what I use anyway, with Let's Encrypt certificates. I love Let's Encrypt. They're awesome. And I use Cloudflare for my DNS challenge. So I have this environment set up here right now. One of the things we can do, and I'm going to bring up a little scratch pad here first. I have this at the ready. When you request a certificate, you have to answer a challenge. You have to prove you own the domain, right? And there are 2 ways to do that. There are actually more than 2, but the 2 main ones are a HTTP challenge, where you place a document or a file, an empty file with a certain name in your document root, or DNS challenge, where you you add a DNS record. In this case, we are going to use DNS because we have wildcard certificate here, and you can't do that on a single website. So DNS would be the way to do that. This would be the command. I'm going to do a quick dry run. Just takes a minute so you can see how it works. So just to give an example, we would run certbot. We only want the cert only. We give our domain, and we say that we prefer a DNS challenge. We'll do a dry run. I am a fan of dry runs. You will see them throughout this demo. Again, it keeps you from tripping over yourself. So we're going to simulate renewal of a certificate because I already have one. They ask you to deploy a DNS text record under that name with that value, which you can do very simply here. Add a record. It's a text record. Oh, sorry, that's not what I wanted. There we go. Name goes there. And we give this value in it. So we are setting a text record in DNS with that name. TTL, I can make it a minute. And it has that content. So once you have that, you can go look that up to see when it lands. Google Admin Toolbox has a handy dig. And sure enough, there it is, ending in 1DY, right, which matches what we had here, right there. And once we do that, we can press enter. Certbot will double check things, say, good to go, dry run success. That's basically all we do.
And the reason behind this, or why we're doing this, is Acme or gosh, who is the provider? I don't know why my brain just farted on this.
Certigo?
Yeah, so basically they want to prove that you own the domain that you're creating a certificate for. And so the way that they do that DNS challenge is, oh, you own the DNS for that domain. So please insert this record to prove that you have enough
Same.
control over it. Yeah. And
Yeah.
same thing with the HTTP challenge, right? It's you own this web server that domain is being pointed at. So therefore, please show us that you own that through creating this.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So, Sectigo, I think, was that who it was? I think I pronounced it incorrectly before. But yeah. So once you get those certificates, just to do a quick check back of where we are. So we have our certificates. They will be, CertBot will give them to us in PEM format, privacy enhanced mail format. Those are identifiable by begin certificate, end certificate, things like that. Here's an example. That's what it looks like, right? And then there'll be a certificate file, which is our X509 cert. There'll be a chain file. I'll explain that in a minute. Chains have a way of giving you a trust relationship between your certificate and the authority. And sometimes there'll be intermediaries, if you will, intermediate certificates. And it just follows along. It's just, I got this certificate. It was given to me by this authority, which was given to me by that authority, all the way down to the root. Full chain is just a combination of cert and chain. So there's our cert, and then there's our chain right after it, and then a private key. Telltale sign of an ECDSA key, they're really short. They're not as long. If you looked at SSH keys, they're a bit longer, and the ones that I've used recently. Maybe I have to use ECDSA in more places. Can you use ECDSA in SSH? Probably.
Yes, yes, you can.
There you go. See, I have to keep up with the times. I'm only doing it in OpenShift. Anyway, so let's have a look at those certificates. Let's look at the, I have a little loop. You'll be seeing this loop a lot. I'm just running through the apps and the API directories. These are my certificates that I already have. And I'll just use, this is another handy command you'll want. And we're going to spend a little bit of time on the certificates, because this is an area where, when I worked in consulting, customers new to this could sometimes, they might rush a bit or jump at opportunities and might come back tail between their legs saying, we messed stuff up. The certificates aren't set up correctly. So I want you to see and understand behind the scenes what's going on. We are going to look at an X509 certificate. We're going to just break apart three things. The subject, which in this case would be the domain name, the issuer, who gave it to us, and then the subject alternative name. So that's one of the requirements. The private keys also must be unencrypted, but the fully qualified domain name has to be in the SAN field of the cert. And there's the chain of trust I was talking about. Cert, intermediate, root. In that order, must be in that order. So let's look at what we have here. So this is showing the cert for apps. The subject, every time you see subject, it's a new entry. So the subject is the apps, the Ingress server. It was issued by Let's Encrypt. It has a name of E6. If you look at chains of trust on Let's Encrypt site, you'll see the intermediate CAs, and there's E6 right there. And there's the SAN, like we wanted. So it's in there. That's important. And then for API, it also has one, just as a rule. Let's Encrypt does that. But notice the CN's different. It's E5 instead. That's just how that worked out. You can also look at more details, but I wanted to narrow it down here. So next thing we want to do is verify the issued cert against the chain. What do I mean by that? So we have this cert, right? We have a chain of authority. We want to make sure it's okay. You think you would, and you could generally trust that it's okay when you got it from Let's Encrypt, but I like to check for myself with my own two eyes. So we're going to use the OpenSSL verify command. And notice what we're doing here. We're giving a CA file, the certificate authority, that is the chain of authority that follows your certificate. Is that full, remember I said that full chain file was both the cert and the intermediate? That's the full chain. So we provide that as the CA file as well as the cert itself. That's the last parameter there. And this will show you, oh, we have a problem. Huh. Who'd have thunk it? I would never have expected this. we have a domain, right? And if we follow along here, let's encrypt E6, but then there's something missing. Can't get the issuer for E6. It's not in there. Oops. So it's not the full chain. And if you look in the OpenShift documentation, we need the full chain. What's missing? Turns out whatever issued E6 and E5 is missing. And we can look at the full chain file to find out what that is. So we'll do the same thing we did earlier. Look at the subject, the issuer, and this SAN, and we'll find out who the issuer in the full chain file is. It turns out it's this. E6 is issued by Internet Security Research Group. That's Let's Encrypt. And the name of that is ISRG root X1. Sounds like a prog rock album. I don't know why. but under chains of command, if you go to the top, there are your two root CAs for Let's Encrypt, X1 and X2. Terrific. So we need that. Well, we're going to go grab it, and we're going to, add a file to that API and apps directory. We'll grab the root certificate. We'll store it, the root CA in root.pem, and then we'll concatenate that onto the end of full chain and make a new file, fullchain.root.pem. Now you've got your cert, your intermediary, and the root CA. So it's all in there now. Yeah.
It's our words. The ISRG do they get automatically installed in the cluster? Like, because that seems like the production Let's Encrypt, right? So does that come in like when you install the CA package, whatever, I can't remember what it's called anymore, but like there's like a Fedora package or RHEL package you can install. It installs like all the PEMs for the CAs, like the trusted signers or certificate authorities. Because I just did like a trust list on my Fedora machine and a CISRG. So I'm just wondering, does it get deployed automatically or?
So do you see it on Fedora? I have Fedora 40. I
have Fedora. If I do trust space list pipe grep ISRG.
Yep.
Capital ISRG. I see like at least the
like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah, so you have
it's on, and I'm wondering if I installed that or if it was already there. It probably was already there.
Yeah,
you have it. But in an OpenShift cluster, I thought I'm going to follow the rules.
No, 100%. Sure. Yeah.
But on Fedora, you're right. That's a good question. Yeah. So that's.
I think it's also important. A lot of enterprises will have their own CAs, and you want to have that full chain inside of there as well, right? They're not relying on one of these external ones, especially disconnected environments. You're always going to have that the full chain inside of there just in case, because
absolutely. Yeah, that's very important. So both good. So now let's look at our fullchain.root file, and you will see it's a little longer now. Your first one is the cert, second is C6, third is root X1, down here same except E5. And now if we try to verify again, you will see that they work. All good. And now we're going to do one more thing, because I'm very thorough, perhaps to a fault. I'm going to verify the issued certificate against the private key. These are ECDSA keys. So what we do here is we match the public key output of both. If this was an X509 cert and an RSA key, we would be matching the MD5 output. And I just run an X509 OpenSSL command to get the public key. And then for the ECDSA, I do the same thing, similar, and just get the public key out. And trust me on this, they do match. I'm not trying to get fancy with the comparison, but these two match, hooray. Good. If you were to remove the password from the key, you would use a command like this. We don't have to use it, but it would be just bring in the key. You'll be prompted for your passphrase, and you'll get a no pass version. So you're going to need that. So that covers that. Now we should log into our cluster, shouldn't we? Let's do that now. So we are going to log into the cluster. We have our password for kubeadmin. One thing I'll do here is I'll clear out our kube config file. There's probably an OC config command to do that. I should have used that here to keep everything in the OC realm. But we're going to basically log in as kubeadmin. This is the account that you get when you set up your cluster. And there's our server. It's going to follow the API link, port 6443. And you'll see the server uses a certificate signed by an unknown authority. Interesting. We'll use insecure connections then. And now we're in. We put in our password real quick. Hold on. Helps if I copy that passphrase there. There we go. Okay, let's try that again. What is going on? Live! Okay, I see what happened. It just scrolled down a bit. Why am I getting...
There's some sort of pop-up that...
Yeah, there's a pop-up and it shouldn't be happening. Oh, do you want to paste 2 lines of text into the terminal? No, I don't want to paste that. VS Code was trying to be helpful. Let's copy that again. I see what happened. It still had my other paste. Now we're in. Okay. Remember what I was talking about when I said we sometimes rush too quickly? That was a perfect example of that. So
it never happens with us.
It never happens to me ever before. Let's look at what happened. So in the .cube directory, it has your last login, all your context profiles. I forget what they're called now. Configurations. We can flatten that view and we'll stick it in the kubeconfig latest file here. And you'll see the insecure skip TLS verify. That's a tip off that the certificate being used is not verified. There's no trust relationship there. I wanted to show you what that looked like. We're going to skip that for now. What I'd like to show you right now, I was talking about having some fun tricks, so to speak. Oh, here it is in OC. I like to follow this rule, which I heard from another Red Hatter, Andrew Blum, says, make a change, test a change, apply a change. So one thing you could do with the OC command, that's your way into a lot of things on the command line in OpenShift. You can diff your file that you're going to make a change with what's on the cluster before you apply it. Very handy. Just like if you use Git, same idea. Another thing that I really like are dry runs. You'll see how these work in a minute, but you can basically try your command out before you commit it, and you'll see what would have been stored on the server. You could also do a dry run to make a change. So dry run equals client for changes that are new, server for things that are on the server where things have to run some logic there. You can even validate against the schema, the API schema. Really handy. And of course, we have OC explain to look at documentation of your various APIs. So yeah, it's context. That's what I was thinking of.
Yeah, OC explain is one that I use a lot. And then I know you didn't touch on it, but I saw it on the bottom of the file there. So the when you turn the verbosity up, so and you can do the log level with any of the OC commands.
Any of them.
If you're ever curious about what APIs are getting called, like you want to set up an RBAC role or something like that, turn the verbosity up to like 10. It'll tell you exactly which APIs are being used, and you can go in and update your cluster roles or roles as needed.
Very handy. Yes. Outstanding. So now let's go back to our... So we've done that. Oh, the other thing we didn't do is we didn't log into the cluster itself, the console. You will see this the first time you go. You will be warned of a potential security risk. And we can look at the certificate. I think it's a pop-up. You won't see it here. So we'll accept the risk. We'll take the risk and continue. And then something happens. You're asked a second time. Wait, I just said go ahead. That's because you're looking at now the OAuth app. We need to go through OAuth when we get in here. So we're going to need that password again.
I think and some browsers will also, like, they won't even give you that option to click accept the risk, depending on certain conditions. I want to say the Chromium-based browsers.
Yes.
So if you encounter that, you actually have to like click in the window and then type on your keyboard, all lowercase, no spaces, "This is unsafe."
I was gonna. Thank you. Yes. Classic. This is unsafe. You actually have to type that in. That is the truth. And I'm going to have 2 of these windows up. So now I'm logged in. Yeah, this is unsafe. That cracked me up when I first saw that. Really?
Yeah.
That's what they're calling it? Wow.
And you also note in your browser window there, because you accepted the risk, when you look at the little lock icon, it has the yellow triangle. I know it's super small to see in the stream window, but typical browser things like, it's not a verified certificate, or a validated certificate, I should say. So therefore it has the warning.
Yeah. Does it show that pop-up right there?
Yeah.
Site information. Oh, good. Well, that's good to know. I don't know if it shows that window though. Probably not.
It does.
A separate window.
Yeah.
Bummer.
I don't know if you're using Wayland or X, but both of them are suspect in their own ways when screen sharing.
Yes, they are. Oh, so we don't want that. So now that we've done that, we've seen that console access not secure, login fails, verification. Oops. So first thing we'll do, we'll set the cluster-wide proxy. This is a setting in OpenShift where you can set, in this case, the root certificate specifically. We'll try and go through this fairly quickly-ish. We're going to create a config map. You can call it whatever you want. We're going to use the root certificate. And I tried to break this up for ease of reading. When you create a config map, you can have a from file option, and you basically are giving what looks like a file name and a value for the contents of that file. This is really a key, CA bundle CRT, but it acts as a file name when the config map is mounted like a volume. Very handy. So you see I'm going to do a client dry run. We're going to output the YAML and put it into our file, which is right down here, custom CA YAML. And that's what it looks like. This is YAML that you'll be seeing all over OpenShift. There's your bundle, there's your cert.
I just want to point out that I really appreciate the dry run, taking an OC command line and turning it into YAML. And now, I didn't have to, as the administrator, I didn't have to go through and figure out the YAML formatting. I didn't have to go through and do all this other stuff. Now I can take this and I can drop it into my GitOps configuration or any of the other things that I want.
Yeah.
Can you imagine indenting this by hand? I can, because I've done it. Maybe I wasn't using it. Maybe I wasn't using an editor that let me do column tabs or whatever. But exactly, I sent in the file and magic happens. Can I use the console? Yes, I can. Brief explanation. You go into home search. You make sure you turn on show default projects. And in this case, we're in the OpenShift config namespace. We go in there and we look at our config maps. And you will see, oh, am I looking in the right space? Yeah, CA bundle should be in there, isn't it? Oh, I have, of course it's not there. Why? Because I haven't committed it yet. See? So we do have to apply that, actually. So let's do that. Now we'll see it in there's custom CA. There it is. So it's just the cert, the root cert. Okay, great. What's next? Now we're going to patch the cluster-wide proxy config to take advantage of that. Now, usually, you will sometimes see this a lot. You'll see these OC patch commands. They will take a bunch of JSON bunched together. This is really just showing you a path into the YAML spec, followed by trusted CA, followed by name, followed by our custom CA bundle name. I find that that can sometimes be problematic. Sometimes I'll make a mistake typing it. I tend to do copy paste, but in this case, those are very handy once you understand what they do. But we're going to use the web console. And before I do that, I'm going to kind of jump ahead a bit. I'm going to go to administration, cluster settings, cluster operators, and I'm going to filter on everything but available. You'll see why in a minute. So this will give me a nice monitor of any time operators start changing. I can keep an eye out here. You can do this from the command line too, but I just wanted to have that ready to go. So now we're going to use the web console and we'll go to administration, cluster settings, but instead of cluster operators, we'll go to configuration. And then we'll search for proxy, because this is the cluster-wide proxy, and go into the YAML. And there's our spec. Oh, did I not delete that? Oh, sorry. This is yeah. I must have forgotten to remove it after my last dry run. Anyway, this would have been an empty spec, but here we would basically be setting it to add trusted CA and that name. Let's see. So we did that. Great. So what you didn't see is some things would have changed. Had I removed that, we would have seen a few things change over in here briefly. Namely, there are 5 operators that would have quickly changed: authentication, console, image registry, OpenShift API server, and OpenShift controller manager. They're pretty brief, but that's what we would have seen here. You'll get to see it again in a minute, though, when we change the when we patch the ingress operator.
Does setting that change anything on the nodes as well? Does that change any of the machine configs or anything like that?
I don't know if it changes the machine configs, but it does. Well, I guess it would have to, because everything, the machine configs, they run the show, right? So that's another point that Andrew sort of brought up there, is that you don't want to go onto the nodes making manual changes. Everything declarative. Let the machine config do its job. So you make all your changes through the regular channels, and then let it propagate as it's supposed to. So my guess is probably, I could be wrong about that, but I can't imagine any other thing that would happen. So it's probably propagating some changes in about that, and then it in turn modifies the nodes.
Wait, potential aspects of doing that might cause the nodes to reboot?
I don't know. This did not. When I did it, my nodes did not reboot. There are some things that happen first time you make a change, and then they don't. It's not as intense the next time. I don't think this is one of those.
Okay.
But just keep that in mind. If you make any changes on the nodes, that's to Sully's point. If you do make changes on the nodes, that's a potential outcome, is that the node's going to be like, I'm wrong, and it's going to bounce and try and get itself back to being right. Right.
Exactly. So let's look at what's being used right now. We can use OpenSSLS client to look at the OpenShift console. This is the web console we were using over here, and we can see what certificates it has. And you'll see it's using. When I set up this cluster, of course, I used apps OCP Dynamax CNet, but you can see that the issuer is not Let's Encrypt. It's the ingress operator. So this is an internal thing, and it's also handy. I like to list the not after, so you can see when it expires. Very handy to do. So real quick, we're going to make a certificate secret. This is going to use. It's going to be in the OpenShift ingress namespace. So we're going to use our certain key from apps over here, and we'll do another dry run. This time we're going to use the full chain. The documentation for OpenShift says that they don't mention that you need the root CA in this. Or rather, I think they do say that. But because we have this cluster-wide proxy that already has the root in it, I found out that if I remove the root from here, it's fine. I'm going to follow the rules. I'm going to keep it the whole chain in there. So again, there's our certain key secret. This is now a secret in the OpenShift ingress namespace. I would show that on the cluster, but I want to save time a little bit here. And if that looks good, we apply that. It does look good. Now we have our ingress secret. If you wanted to see where that was real quick, I can just quickly go to it. I have all of my links kept, and there it is. This is what we just created for OpenShift ingress. Now that we have that, we can patch the ingress operator config. Again, you could do it 2 ways. You can use the web console, or you can use the command if you know how. It's easy if you know how, as they say. We would be patching the ingress controller operator default settings. Where is that? I will show you this, though. A lot of these settings at this level are in administration cluster settings configuration. So in this case, it's the ingress controller, not ingress. There's 2 of them. We want the second one here. And it's going to be added within here. There'll be a section we'll add called default certificate, just to show you. There it is right there. It doesn't exist in the spec initially, but it's about to. And when we do that, it's been patched. And now you can see right away things are happening here. authentication and console will be momentarily unavailable while this happens. Do not panic. This might be a good time to take other Q&A in general, but you'll see, I think 5 items progressing. It'll be authentication, console, ingress, Kube Controller Manager, and Kube Scheduler. This takes about 9 minutes. So we have a little bit of time here. I can also show what happens for the API server. It's a little bit different because I want to show what happens with the login and the browser window as well. But let me throw it back to you, Sully and Jonny, for a minute while we let this.
I was going to point out. Ashley, you brought this up earlier of operators. Right, operators were a big change with OpenShift 4, and this is like the epitome of examples when it comes to that. Because if you've ever done Kubernetes, like not OpenShift, but like vanilla Kubernetes administration or even OpenShift 3 administration, all of these things that you see happening in the background, you were doing individually as the administrator, or you were abstracting it through something like Ansible. But with operators, basically Red Hat and the OpenShift engineering team has done all of that automation for you. So all I actually did was go in and say, hey, go use this new certificate. It's stored in the certificate, or in the seeker rather. And the operator behind the scenes is going in and saying, okay, I'm going to update the config and bounce all these services, and everything's going to come back, and you didn't have to do anything. Or you had to do relatively little compared to. So operators being, the major difference between OpenShift 3 and OpenShift 4, there's a reason why operators triggered that major version change. And this is one of those, right? Authentication is usually another one that I highlight of. If you ever did an OpenShift 3, right, I want to add a new, authentication provider, HT password. Okay, well, feed it the HT passwords, file into Ansible, and then sit back and let it go for a few minutes and hope that nothing goes wrong. I need to add another user into the HT password. Okay, well, repeat that whole process again. Or maybe I'm going into SSHing to each control plane node and adding the file and bouncing the service and repeating. And now you go into the OAuth config and you point it at the secrets or the config map, and you're done. And it just takes everything for you. So operators, it's one of those things for whoever was asking earlier about OpenShift and learning OpenShift and stuff like that. Like that concept of how to manage OpenShift is different than basically every other Kubernetes out there. And this is one of the reasons why.
Indeedy.
Go ahead, Ashley.
I was going to say, just to give an update over here, you can see under the messages progress, 2 of 3. We have 3 replicas, right? Because tiebreaker votes. So they are updating. Controller manager console is still unavailable. I will not lie. I'm surprised it shows that at this point. I confess that one of the things I did last night as I was running through this again, I might eat my words, for this command, I was using fullchain.pem without the root. I put it back in because when I checked the documentation, the docs say, no, put it in there too. So I added that in. I hope that didn't mess things up. If it did, we can always replace the secret by simply changing this to fullchain.pem and doing another dry run, checking it and applying that, and then it will take that as the new cert. Hopefully it's okay. I guess we'll see what happens. Oh, whew.
Yeah,
I've been vindicated.
I was going to say console is always last. Like I don't even worry about it until it's been like really, really crazy time.
Yeah. I sometimes forget that, but it looks like it's good. So that's good. So that's out of the way.
So
I don't want to reload this. Go ahead.
So Rakesh asked, should we renew the certificates manually, or Let's Encrypt will auto-renew them?
Aha. Wow, I'm really glad you asked that. So the way I'm doing this right now is all manual. Mm-hmm. Can you do this in an automated fashion? Absolutely. Sully, you mentioned Acme, which is the protocol for renewing things in an automated fashion. There is, in fact, with Let's Encrypt's, or actually, sorry, it's not Let's Encrypt that wrote this. CertBot is from IEFF, I think, or EFF. They offer a way to do automation using Let's Encrypt to auto renew that. So you don't necessarily have to do this manually. In OpenShift, we have a certificate manager operator. And one of our very own Red Hatters, Stephen Nimmo, I'm going to do a shout out, wrote this really nice article. I will share the link about how to generate Let's Encrypt certificates with the cert manager. And then the example they give is Cloudflare for the DNS solver I showed you earlier. But what's nice is in the documentation for cert manager, they talk about application cert lifecycle management. We aren't covering that on this live stream today, but that's what people use cert manager for, to automatically handle the lifecycle of that. But what Stephen shows you is how to do that for what I'm showing you today, the Ingress and the API, and walks through all the steps. It's really nice. Shout out to Stephen. Recommend that. I just provided the link.
Yeah, we did a cert manager topic a long time. Like when it first went tech preview, it was tech preview. Like the routes part wasn't even supported yet. I mean, it was way back. It was early. So that might be something solely that we revisit, like a hot topic kind of thing. No pun intended.
Yeah, I was just getting ready to say that cert manager, which is now GA, is important if you don't want to or cannot use wildcard certificates. Because it automates the process of creating those whatever .apps.
Right. Yeah, excellent operator. I think was that Andrew Block behind that? I forget, but it's terrific.
I don't know, but that would surprise me. I know Andy wrote the he wrote the first version of the Quay operator as well.
I didn't know that. Ooh, trivia. Excellent. I like that. Yeah. I am not surprised.
He was on the live stream for that. He was on the live stream. It's been like 3 years, but yeah, he came on the live stream and showed us how all that stuff works. So, yeah.
Outstanding. Wow. This is still going. It's almost there. While that's cooking, so it looks like we don't need to worry about this. I tend to want to leave the cluster alone until it gets quiescent in this case. Oh, I guess I'll show you this. The other way to watch for an update from the command line, this is maybe a bit Rube Goldberg here. Oops, where did it go? There it is you could do a watch and pass OC get CO, but it's very long. So I look for all of the true, false, false entries if you've seen OC get CO output. And I just say anything that's not that. What's very convenient is it also gives you the title line because that will never have it. So we can see here just Kube API server and Kube scheduler on the home stretch. And if you come back here, it looks the same. So whether you want to use the command line or the web console, it is your choice.
I like that little hack of the true, false, false.
Yeah, right. It's very brute force, but it works. So one thing we could do in the meantime, maybe we'll see this. Should I try this yet, or should I wait? One node, two nodes. That's the API server and scheduler.
YOLO.
I know, right? Go for it. Well, there's one more node to go for Kube API server, and this is what we want to talk. So we have a 2 out of 3 chance of getting it right. Oh, sorry, we're going to the app, not the API server. This bit of command here simulates being a secure client to connect to an app, in this case, the OpenShift console, looking at the certs. We saw this before. And now it should change, right? Let's see if it did. Yes, it did. Ha-ha, huzzah. So you can see it changed. I can also double check to make sure that my expiration dates are okay. We see that the root expires quite a ways in the future. The E6 a bit sooner. And then mine, of course, the Let's Encrypt certificates expire within, I guess, what is it, 3 months? Looks like.
90 days. Yep.
They're 90 days. Let's see, how are we doing here? Good, down to one more. Excellent.
Yeah, and actually, real quick, if you can go back to that, just the important part here to remember, in case people forgot from the from your previous output, is the issuer before was your Ingress controller, right? Like it was an Ingress issuer or something like that is what I think the label. But now you can see it's actually Let's Encrypt and it's officially legit.
That it is. If I was to reload my browser window, there's a lock and there's no verified by Let's Encrypt, so that's good. So you can't see that pop up, but but we don't need to because we have this. Haha. So what if this didn't work out? Another command you can use. I can use curl at the health z. These are used to see if a service is healthy. It's a common convention to use health z. We can do that and actually follow through the entire conversation there. And with extra verbosity, we can see what happened. And there's the certificate as well. Verify OK. I know I've already tested this. If I didn't put the root cert in there, the X1, it still comes out OK because we've posted the cluster-wide proxy. We made that change. But again, following the directions. And there you go. So how about now? Are we?
Curl's probably my favorite like debugging tool. Like I
right?
use check if ports are open and stuff like that all the time. That's probably one of my favorite tools of all time.
It's so good.
It is.
So okay, I'm going to blitz through this because it's essentially the same thing, but for the API certificate, it's a similar idea. We can look at that as well. Remember our login showed us that it wasn't trusted, and oh, sorry, wrong. Oops. That's still the. I wanted to show the API certificate. Here it is. That's what I want. Wrong command. Beg pardon. So again, for the API, it's using Kube API Server LB Signer as the authority. So let's fix that. So real quick, we'll make our secret. It's going to be the same way as before. We're using the full chain. Here you must use the full chain. Doc say so, so do it. This will be in the OpenShift config namespace, right? And again, we could see that in the web console. Trust us that it's there. Now it looks good. We apply it. Now the secret's there. Nothing's happened yet. If you want to see where it is, I can show you real quick in the web console because I have links. So there's the secret for OpenShift config namespace called API. So that's good, right? Oh, I never went through my other slides. This is what I was going to show you before. And now for the API server, we're doing this. I forgot I had slides. So now we're going to patch the config, much like we did last time. What we're going to do is, let me bring up my scratch pad here real quick so you can see. We're going to add to the spec a serving cert section, and we'll add a named certificate section with a name of our API. And you can have multiples of these, by the way. That's indicated by the... Something else I want to point out here. You'll see that I have my lists formed a bit differently than you might be used to. You might be used to seeing these tabbed in a bit more. I like to keep all, picky point here. My preference is to keep all of the text always spaced in 2 at a time. And so I like to put my list indicators in the margins. In fact, it's still valid YAML. You can see here, if I put it in here, you'll see it gets formatted like that. The thing I like about putting at least editing my own YAML, putting the list indicators in the margin is it prevents tab creep, so to speak. Because the more further you go in, the further along it gets. And it just, anyway, just a little fun thing I thought I'd share.
Like, I feel like that's one of those, like, you prefer curly braces on the same line or on the next line? Yeah.
That's right. That's right. So you use what is best for you, of course. But that's what we're going to edit. And I will now make that patch right here. And then we're going to wait another. So there we go. So now we patched the cluster. If we look in here, we'll soon see. And that patch happened a bit quickly, but it was basically just pointing to, it was showing what I was explaining a minute ago in my scratch pad. Where's my scratch pad? Here it is. Yeah, so we basically patched that. We might as well show you where it looks like. It's only fair. It's good to see what's going on. Configuration. Where was it? It was in the API server right up here. There it is at the bottom right there. And now there it is, Kube API server. It's mostly all that's going to progress in this case. And once that happens, then the API will be fine. And that's really it. there is one other thing I want to mention after this, and that has to do with rollback. No, we will not be going through rollback on this live stream. That would take too long, but I did want to talk about it because there are some things that you want to watch out for in terms of the order. I want to point out the order of operations that we went through here today. I started with the cluster-wide proxy setting for the root cert, then the ingress controller certain key, and now the API server certain key. I did a not too good thing when I was rehearsing this. I managed to do that not quite in reverse. I changed the API server certain key first, then the cluster-wide proxy, and then the ingress controller certain key. And you say, Ashley, that should be fine, right? Well, yes and no. What'll happen is, if you do that, I found out, and this has to do with what happens when you log in. Let's explain this a little bit. You'll get that error. If I change the API server certain key, and I haven't touched the ingress controller, you'll get this error, TLS failed to verify certificates, signed by an unknown authority. And I wasn't sure what was happening there. I probably should dig into it a bit more. But what I think was actually happening is when you log in with a username and password, it needs to go through OAuth, right, to verify. And I was wondering if this was actually not an error about API, was it an error about OAuth or about the ingress? I think
that's what it is.
You think that's what it is? Yeah. But the thing is, when you type in OC login, you get that error. My knee-jerk reaction is, oh no, my cert is wrong. And so I went down a few rabbit holes trying to fix it. So yeah, that happens. And if you had to get around it and you were in here, one thing you could do is bypass OAuth by getting a token from copy login command in that menu there. This bypasses OAuth because you've now got the token generated by it. This is essentially what ends up happening. You end up getting this SHA-256 token once you have authenticated yourself using a username and password. So we can take that token, send it in, and then you won't see that error when that happens. How are we doing for time here? Yeah, one node. Okay. So let's talk about that then real quick. So for rollback, all you're going to do is you're going to do some patches. I think I have all this stuff. Yeah, I think I have it in my reset file. Let's look at that.
Actually, a quick question for you. If we're not using a cluster-wide proxy, for example, to access the internet, do we need to apply that configuration?
I do it just as a rule of thumb. But yeah, if you're not accessing anything outside, this is more for ingress. So that's a good point. I mean, it's called the cluster-wide proxy config, but what we are doing is patching the root CA part of it, which is used by ingress controller. So I'm looking at it as more of an ingress thing than an egress thing. So even if you're on, isolated setup, I would still use that. Yeah.
You can get away with it, Sully. You don't necessarily have to patch. Like I hardly ever patch the cluster-wide proxies just because in my mind, from a disconnected background, like that means something like very specific. Like I'm trying to go out usually. And so, but like I've seen the docs, exactly what you're talking about, where it maps to that, but you can get away with not having to patch the proxy at all. Like you can actually just patch the ingress controller and all that stuff, and it works just fine.
And I think that's
so long as you go ahead.
I was going to say, I think that's because the cluster-wide proxy for the ingress side is only used internally. So long as inside of the cluster, everything trusts itself, the client isn't actually passing through. So it doesn't.
Yeah. And this is another reason why you may want to use the full chain for the ingress controller, because if you leave the root CA out, where is it going to get it from?
Yeah.
Right. So,
absolutely.
So you do use full chain root with the root CA there.
And actually, I do have a question, and this isn't this is more of a I'm not really sure, so I'm asking, and I'm not trying to stump the chump or anything.
Go ahead.
With the ingress controller, when we patch that, right? Like the way I see it in my mind is we patch the ingress controller with a secret, and because that's at like the basically layer 7, right? That's at the application layer, right, or session layer, whatever Oh my God, I can't remember. I'm sorry, I said that out loud. Let me turn my microphone off.
Anyways, turn your microphone off.
It's
I
like
know. I know what you meant. I know what you
meant. The ingress point, right? It's all coming in.
Yeah.
When we patch the API, that's actually going to the nodes because I think that those have like the static manifest, right? If I'm not mistaken, for some of the API components. So I'm wondering when we patch that ingress or when we patch the API for that, is it applying the CA locally through a machine config? Is that the part that's doing the machine config change, or?
I should know the answer to this.
Because
I'm pretty sure
think
that's
that,
correct.
Okay, yeah, I think the ingress controller is patching the router, and then the API is patching the nodes with all the stuff. Okay, that makes sense.
That's right. Yeah, ingress equals router equals apps. Stuff coming in. Yeah, exactly. So they are two different parts of the landscape there.
And Johnny, just for the record, both Our Hope and I Will Kick You corrected us and said that Ashley's way of doing this is the correct way of doing it, and we should patch the proxy.
Thank you. It's all good. It's all good.
I'm just saying
I didn't
can
pay them.
do it without it.
I promise. I didn't pay them off. No, it's fine. It's fine. But it's
I love that handle, by the way. I Will Kick You. That is probably
that's a great handle.
That's top notch, right? That's really good. Our Hope 9.
Right? So now we're almost done here. So we're on 2 out of 3 nodes. While we're resting, I want to talk about HTTP strict transport security. You're not going to see this demonstrated, but when you roll back the opposite. I do in the opposite way. I roll back the API server, then the ingress controller. And in this case, the secrets can stay. I just get rid of the patches. This will give you a bit of a challenge when you're in a web browser and you go to reload your page and now you get, no, you aren't allowed to even give me an exception. You aren't even allowed to type this is unsafe. You can't get back to your web console. What do? Well, it turns out, at least on Chrome and on Firefox, I'm pretty sure Safari supports this too. There are ways out of that. But once you get to the cluster-wide proxy, or rather the ingress controller, you're going to have a challenge with Firefox, for example. You'll want to close all of your console tabs, browser tabs. I use Command-Shift-H to get into, let's see if I can do it from here. You'll get a list here. Look for your cluster link, for the console link, I should say. And you can right-click that and pick Forget About This Site. This removes all of the domain security policy stuff. Chrome has a net internals link that does the same thing. You can query the domain, delete it. Although in Chrome, I had to still restart my browser, even though I had no more browser windows open. And then once I did both of those things, you're back to where you started. This is unsafe, and you can get back in. So keep in mind, people get stuck there a lot, and that's how you get around that. So yeah, let's see how we're doing. Well, we're close. Let's try it anyway, just so you can see. Where did my terminal window go? Did I close my terminal window? Well, we'll bring it back. There we go. So let's try this. 2 out of 3, right? Not too bad. Let's see how our CO is doing. Oh, it's done. Good. And if I go back to here, it's done. Great. Let's test it out, shall we? We will try another login. And I guess we can also prove that this is the API, and yes, signed by X1. And then if we try an OC login now, we will not be asked when we use a username and password. See, there it is. And we should be able to log in there, and everything's good. There. What do you mean internal error? Oh, goodness. What on earth? Good thing I made a copy. Let's try that again.
You should just watch us do a demo. Either I forget where I'm at, or I'll set a password to something really obscure and I forgot what I set it to, and then I look like a fool because I'm over here trying to remember what I set it to. Yeah, it's terrible.
No matter how many times you rehearse it, doesn't matter.
When I'm doing it, it's bad.
And if I look at kubeconfig, you'll see that it no longer has that skip TLS verify. And there's the token This is not the token that we saw a minute ago. This is the one generated through my login. Maybe it is the same token. I hope not. This is a fresh authentication. And that is it. I think we've run through all the things. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah.
So that is
Well done.
my,
Actually-
thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Actually, I have to say that this is, for anyone who's watching, like this is a testament to like the learning services folks and just like the quality of the work that y'all do. And like there's a reason y'all are the experts and y'all are creating these things. Like I always learn things whenever I interact with y'all. So thank you very much for coming on and showing us this today.
Yeah. Well
Thank
done.
you for having me. Thank you. I appreciate it. This was a lot of fun. I hope we get to pick another topic and maybe I come back on some other time and do this again.
Anytime. You are always welcome. So for our audience, thank you for joining us today. If you have any questions in the last couple minutes here, be sure to put those in the chat. We'll do our best to address them in the next, say, 2 or 3 minutes. If you're not watching us live, or if something comes to mind after we have ended the stream here, please don't hesitate to reach out via email. So you can see my email there on screen, sully@redhat.com or jonny@redhat.com. We're happy to answer all the questions. We'll reach out to Ashley or anybody else that we need to in order to get answers to those things. It doesn't have to necessarily be related to today's topic. With that being said, I think, Jonny, do we have anything coming up in the next few weeks?
I'm glad you asked, Andrew. Yeah. So we wanted to kind of talk about the schedule for some of the things that we've got coming up. So the next, probably 5 weeks, 6 weeks, we've got a lot going on, just kind of leading into KubeCon and stuff like that, leading into the holidays and stuff. So the next week we're going to do Disconnected OpenShift Part 1. And so what that means is we're going to use the V2 edition of OC Mirror, and we're going to mirror content down. We're going to set up the Quay mirror registry. So we're going to kind of like get all of our infrastructure kind of squared away. And we might start some of the provisioning. We might even get far enough to do like a snow deployment. And then we're going to do part 2 of that the week after, which is where we take all that content that we've generated and stuff like that, ship it over to a disconnected bastion, if you want to call it that, and then provision an actual, either a 3-node cluster, whatever resources I could fit on one of my machines. We're going to deploy that all internally. And so we'll go through all the steps to make sure that we're covering soup to nuts. How do I get a Quay mirror registry going? How do I mirror the content? How do I move that content into another environment? And then how do I stand up that environment from that content, including operators, maybe some Helm charts and stuff like that. Stuff that's relevant to us as administrators, to getting our clusters up and running, and actually taking some of the stuff that Ashley's doing right now as part of that day 2, right? Like I've got my cluster deployed. Let me go do something. Let me go do this day 2 operation. So maybe we'll see. Well, I'm going to try not to get too crazy.
Have you decided on what install method to use for the disconnected cluster, Jonny?
So the snow part is super easy because you just generate the ISO based off of all the content. The install method, no, I have not gotten that far. I'm still.
If the audience has any requests, now's the time to let us know. Whichever one is either hardest or easiest for Jonny. We'll let you know.
Yeah. If you want to do like a
Nice.
cool, if you want to do like a non-integrated UPI, we can do that. I'm going to try and do it on KVM, so it's basically what it's going to be anyways. But I can walk through. Yeah, hit me up and let me know if you have a preference, because I can either do a helper node where we set up and we just let DHCP and DNS get spun up from this helper node that Christian stood up like 100 years ago, or I was going to do what I was just planning on doing, which is the using libvirt networking and DNS mask and all that stuff to kind of do all the DNS and DHCP. So if there's a preference that's relevant, let me know. Yes.
All right. Well, looking forward to that. And I know there's a few other things that we've got on the schedule as well, going out a little further. I think we're going to do our normal what's new in 4.17 for administrators.
Yep.
Coming up after that, we've got the console UX, console user experience folks coming on the latter part of October. I know we're going to have a few different streams on 4.17 stuff. I don't know precisely what that's going to look like. It'll depend on what the precise payload looks like. He says, acknowledging that it's like 7 days until we have to figure that out. And then what else do we have? Oh, the ACM folks are coming on in November. So lots of stuff going on. As always, for the audience, if you have anything that you're interested in, don't hesitate to reach out. Feel free to ask us or suggest, request topics that you'd like to know more about. So We greatly appreciate and we generally prioritize those.
Absolutely. And Ashley, thank you so much for coming on. This was awesome. Like you did, yeah. I mean, like just to Andrew's point, right? Like the thoroughness in your content was legit. I did want to ask, do you have a gist or anything like that of all the commands that you're using for all the checks? Or if you can, pass them to me and I'll create one and ship it out.
I thought you'd never ask, Johnny. Yes, I am going to create a gist. I also wanted to put all of my steps, basically the script that I used to follow for this entire live stream, in a Git repo for that. I just want to clean up a few things because you won't need my certs. But the short answer is yes. TLDR, we'll make
Awesome.
that happen.
Yeah, as soon as you get that, just ship it over to me and I'll update the video description with the link to it, and then that way everybody will have it.
You got it.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
All
Thanks
right.
again.
Well,
This
thanks,
was so
Bill.
much fun.
Yeah. And with that, I figure out which buttons to click. Johnny, any last word?
No, thanks for all the interaction. Like I love all the conversation that we get starting this, and then to I will kick you and our Hope 9 and everybody else. Really, thank you for all the questions and your experiences with doing these things that I think are pretty normal to us. So it's cool to see you guys using it too, and letting us know like, yes, you guys are dumb, you're doing it wrong, do it this way.
All right, y'all. See you next week.
Take care, everyone.